Calvin T. Mann, leading EMIY, served over 20,000 youth through speaking, coaching, and mentoring. He has inspired us for years. Welcome to EMIY TV Podcast with your host, Calvin T. Mann, the Encourager.
Welcome. I'm at a loss for words right now. So Heather, go ahead. Heather's in the building. We're in the building for man. Now I am getting a little dark. Huh? The sun got a hold of me, huh? I ain't think so. Everybody was like, dude, the sun got you. So yeah. All right, I am a little darker. So yes. Hello, Heather.
Good day.
Yes, and so what is the first half of the show about?
You can see how he already just jumped in and segmented the show. We are still talking about put your family first.
Yes, we are.
And today,
the first half, we're talking about
strongholds holding fears in place. And getting into some conversations around why we are afraid to let fathers and men lead.
Oh, that was good. That was a good comeback. I like that.
No.
You see that smooth move right there? Monique, you see how she slide that in there? She slid that strongholds, fears in place. Right. Why we are afraid to let fathers lead. Oh, yeah. Okay, let's get it.
So the first half
is.
Well, I mean, I just think it's important that you'll hear me speak on the strongholds over and over again. So that's one you're going to hear repeated. You're going to hear our culture being repeated over and over again, and why this is really important around how our fears can affect our decisions, and looking at our fears from our meridian path, which is our backstory. So our meridian path are the experiences and benchmarks that we had in childhood that we've not gone back to reflect, we've not gone back to unpack them and to understand the meaning from a child's perspective as it was from adult perspective. Because when we don't reflect on those things and we don't unpack that baggage, it just shows up as a matter of fact in our adulthood, and we continue to build and grow based on a perspective that we had as children. And so and that helps us to recognize which strongholds are holding in place, and we can follow the pathway to that stronghold based on the types of fears that we have, the types of reluctance that we have, the types of experiences that we repeat. And those things can be found in those strongholds. And I really think it's important. And I'm speaking to women, I'm speaking to mothers, I'm speaking to wives when we talk about strongholds, because these are some of the weights that we carry. These are some of those bricks and the baggage that we carry. And the more we understand it about ourselves and recognize it, the stronger, better, more engaging, loving, supportive woman, wife, and mother we can be. So I think this is really at the heart of why we have so many reservations, hesitations about men and fathers, and keeping in mind that man or father that and or husband that has been in your pathway was raised by a mother, a wife, and a woman, or had the influences of such in their lives. So we have to be able to look back at those influences, look present at these influences, and then look to the future based on our behavior. Who are we putting out into the world in terms of men, husbands, and fathers? So we have that responsibility and opportunity, more importantly, to raise resilient, be a part of that future of what we want our men, husbands, and fathers to be. So I think this is a really important conversation. So I'm excited to get it started. So, if you see me in my notes, I'm flipping back because again, this is not a uncommon topic to this METV podcast. So I want to tell you what those 5 strongholds are first. And this is not in a particular order, but I would suggest that if you are listening, to write them down and then put them in your priority order. And sometimes you are able to do that based on the feedback that you get from other people. So from relationships, from friendships, and it will kind of unfold. So I'm going to tell you the most common one, and the one that we tend to hear as women and mothers and wives a lot, is control. You're always trying to control this or control that. So control, I'll put that as number 1. The second one is pride. The third one is rejection. The fourth is abandonment. And the fifth one is distraction. And so these are the 5 strongholds. I want you to get used to hearing these. I want you to write them down, because the more you hear it and the more it resonates with you, the faster we can get to those things that are loaded in our luggage. So if you have a whole set of luggage, and I'm talking luggage in terms of baggage, things that you're carrying, and things that you think that you're working on with your self-work or your self-affirmations or your self-care, all of those things are important, but they're only a piece. If you don't know what your triggers are, if you don't know what you're trying to heal and fix, it's not just the wound of the act or incident or the experience. It is the deeper wound. It is the root of that living wound that is rooted in these 5 strongholds. And once we start to understand it, we can start to air it, and we can start to heal it properly. So it's not a wound growing with skin growing over it, and all you have to do is trigger that skin or touch that abrasion, and the wound is wide open again. And so, I'll be very honest with you and share with you that my one of my major strongholds is the rejection factor. And it has caused me in relationships to be very cautious, because as being a woman that's divorced twice, married 3 times, that's a real issue with rejection and abandonment. So for me, those are pretty closely tied with the health of my relationships. And so it makes you a little bit gun shy when you've experienced divorce about jumping back into another relationship. So there's some things that should happen in between that. There's some healing that should happen in between that. There's some reflection. There's some self-work that should happen in between those relationships, even jumping into a relationship after a divorce, after a separation, and even after a loss of a loved one. That be your spouse, being your mate, being your partner. It's really important to take that time to really kind of peel back those layers and see where the pain is coming from, not just from the loss, but for people like me who had that issue of grieving because I felt abandoned. That is a really, really deep wound. And where did that come from for me in my life? And so I'll start with the rejection. I know that even as a child, from a family of 7, I considered myself, or have in times considered myself, the invisible child, as a middle child, and trying to navigate being between 2 sets of kids. So my parents' first set, there's 10 years between me and my oldest brother. And then for the second set, there's 10 years between me and my youngest sister. And so being right there in the middle at the end of a generation in my family and at the beginning of the next generation of my younger siblings, it was really an interesting place to be. I was very, very sensitive because, if you're a big brother or big sister, you have a role to play. If you're a little brother and little sister, there's a role to play. But that place in between, there's some expectation that you kind of just go along to get along. And I was different, but I was so busy trying to fit in, trying to get approval from somebody look at me, somebody see me. That was the position I was in, because, when you come from a large family, sometimes, you tend to fade into the woodwork and you kind of gravitate toward one group or the other. So that one was a big one for me, feeling rejected. And it was things that were happening as a child that I didn't understand and process when I went through my teenage years. So you're going through your peer groups. And because I was already different, I had to make some adjustments with my difference. I had to understand that I am just a unique individual, and this is who I am. So I had to accept some things about not being accepted by other people. It took time for people to understand me and warm up to me. It was an issue. So that part of the rejection runs deep in my experiences. So that could happen in a job, right? You can get terminated from a job, and it triggers those issues of rejection. You can be have a crush, and somebody doesn't respond the way that you expect them to as a crush. That triggers those issues of rejection. There's so many of those examples that we keep holding on to those ideas from childhood, like there's no place for me. I have to make myself seen. And I think even on social media, you have a lot of people who want to be seen and need to be validated. And I would bet that if they track that pain back to childhood, they would find it in that sense of feeling rejected or not having a place or not feeling validated and being seen. So if I know that that's my issue, I have to be mindful as an adult that when I go in for a job interview, or when I am with a peer group, or when I'm in relationships and dating, that nobody is trying to make me feel like I'm not seen, or that I'm not validated, or I'm not important. But I had to deal with that as a child, that my childhood mentality, thinking that that's what that meant, being in a larger family and not having the same types of needs that my brothers and sisters had, made me unimportant. And so I had to go back and keep going back to understand you are a value, you are important, there is a place for you. And my place was in my purpose. So I think that's important.
You think that's important?
You knocking on the table to get my attention? I was just making a point, because rejection is huge. And in relationships, and especially those who have experienced relationships from a lens of divorce or separation or loss, it's a really important and deep space to revisit.
So then let's just make it about rejection then. Right?
Because what about rejection?
This process, the strongholds, rejection is a big deal.
All of them. No, I was speaking for myself. All of them. Everybody has one that is their number one. Some people, it's control. You can't get them to change their mind about anything. You can't get them to do what anybody else may suggest because they want to control the whole. That's another really stronghold that holds people's fears in place.
It's safety and control.
And we like to think so, but again, you have to go back to your childhood and see and explore where you felt like if you weren't the one making the decision, where did that come from?
Okay, so what's another one?
Abandonment.
So how do you get to the place where when you're talking about abandonment, right, that's a really strong thing, right?
All of them are, that's why they're called strongholds. Because
they strongly hold you?
They hold your fears in place as an adult.
And so those are the reasons why it's hard for allowing fathers to lead.
Absolutely. And it's the fear.
It's the fear of letting them lead. Of course, the fear would be there too. You might have the six is cinema, TV, movies, books, the media. What about that one? The media has a stronghold on them as well.
But it's based in these five.
No, I understand the five. I'm just interjecting. It could be
a distraction.
Right, it could be a distraction.
Absolutely, it is a distraction.
Distractions, right?
Yeah.
I like how you pointed out the one thing that you said about. Well, how did you put that? You said, man, I lost that one, but it was about, and this is a sign for you to know that you are aging, right? So. But you said something about how we, in the process, it resonated with me. Anyway, distraction, media, that's most definitely one.
That's huge. Media is that form of distraction.
Media is huge.
It is huge. But again, it's rooted back into that space in your childhood where what you were supposed to be focusing on, maybe you were supposed to be focusing on school or reading or something, and you wanted to watch TV instead. Or you were sneaking to watch things that was not age appropriate for you at that time.
Today they don't have to. It's in their phone.
Right, yeah. Right. There are those boundaries don't exist in a lot of spaces. But we have to. Again, that's looking to the future and the changes that we make to make sure that our children are more resilient, that are more healthy, that are more engaging, and to address, because we had these strongholds, it's best to make sure that's where we start with our own kids. If you felt that you were invisible or rejected, that might be where you want to start with your children. To make sure that they have a voice, to make sure that they feel present and validated, but putting the types of values, cultural values, the values at home in them, so that they are not leaning just on feeling good about themselves, but there's a reason for them to feel good.
So we as fathers play a huge significant part in that. Men, we play a significant part in creating some of those strongholds ourselves. We are not exempt in this stronghold conversation. I think we have significantly impacted the way we are seen, and people have taken advantage of that. I think there have been a number of things, and understand what I'm saying, as we are talking about fathers, but I think we play a significant role in the system, the system and the situation, and the Dr. Joyce Drew, all the things that have impacted your DNA and brought that forward, from a number of things. It's just an astonishing thing to briefly, leave it just right at the stronghold. Strongholds is a big factor. Who built the strongholds? Here are the things. What are these things that built the stronghold? Abuse, domestic violence, rape, violence, murder.
The traumas.
The traumas.
Speaking of the traumas
that created, these strongholds, and now I got something I can do about it, right? I don't have to participate in this. I don't have to do that. I am woman, hear me roar, right? And so women have a voice, and it has to be respected. The one thing I don't want to let it get beyond this conversation, because I know the strongholds is the big piece, but women are to be respected. And to be clear, when I say that, they have to be respected because they have endured just like men, right? And they have gone through some things. And so women have to be respected, but respect has to be something that you and I talk about often, that has to be taught. And we must understand that, right? It's a crazy thing, So go ahead and make your point now. I interrupted you enough.
So, when we look at our whys in adulthood, we can trace them back to our meridian path. But it's important to find those significant benchmarks. So, the things that you mentioned last were really about the traumas in our lives. So, it's not only trauma in our lives. Sometimes it's just drama. It's just drama. It's just people acting out of their emotions, acting out of their insecurities, just acting out. And I see that more as the drama versus the trauma, those deep wounds and experiences that have had a life-changing effect on us as a child and growing up into adulthood. So I think that as we look at benchmarks in childhood, and there are some things that we've buried, but burying it is not the healing. I think of it like the roots of a tree. So you see the trunk of the tree on the surface, and sometimes you can see the roots kind of emerging from the surface. But if you were to remove the soil and you were to see that network of roots up under a tree, one, they're interconnected. So your experience in childhood is also connected to others that were in your circle, in your house, in your peer group. All of those roots are interconnected up under the surface. So being able to recognize that you were not the only one as a child to have this experience. You were not the only one as a child to see the things that you saw. There are interconnections, even if it was a friend that you had that you shared your experiences and thoughts and ideas with, you then impacted that person. And if they shared something with someone else, it's a network of emotions and of experiences that are under our surface that we don't see necessarily, that we don't talk about necessarily, but when we do, we start to find our common ground. And that's a place of healing. That's a place of safety. There is a sense of safety when you recognize that someone else may have had a similar or the same or similar experiences. It becomes a way to have that kind of connection, but to talk through it. To talk about, removing judgment and blame, because now it's really about us. It's really about us after we have the experience. How do we process that experience? What do we do to have the level of reflection and introspection that tells us that I'm not, it's an experience, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. And even if you felt that it was your fault from the lens of a child, you have to remember your frontal cortex is not even developed. Your frontal lobe is not even developed until you into your 20s, like up to 20. I believe it's up to 23. So
no, serious though.
But you cannot even. You're not even making the best rational decisions until you're up to in your 20s. I just had this conversation today with my son's doctor. She was saying that college students think that they have all the answers and they know all that they need to know, but they don't, because it's not even fully developed yet. And so you do have experiences. You do have those things that can either release you from your fears or feed those fears. We are looking for ways, especially when it comes to relationships.
I have a problem with that.
Do you?
I have a serious problem with this frontal cortex conversation.
Your frontal lobe.
Your frontal lobe.
Why is that?
Because there are plenty of people who are super exceed the process. They're smart. They're into their vision. They're into their drive. They're making great decisions. Mm-hmm. They're making life decisions. They're innovative, inventive, mm-hmm. right? And
but not in all areas. Even children who are we call them prodigies, right? Even children who are genius, it still doesn't give them a level of maturity. It still doesn't put them in a position to be able to drive a car. Because you're good in math doesn't mean you can drive a car. I mean, all of the things that go along with a person's development and growth.
No, I get that. I'm not knocking that. I'm saying I get that. I mean, there are a bunch of kids who graduated 16, 17 just this past summer. Mm-hmm. They're already driving. Got a business, you know what I mean? Off to school. I'm gonna graduate in a minute. I'm on my own. I'm handling my like to have the conversation. I get having the conversation, but it almost becomes to me where it's an excuse. Well, you made this decision. Guess what? Your frontal cortex lobe is just not fully developed, and this is likely the decision that you're going to make. And 10 years after you get out of jail, you're going to be okay.
But it is the reality. It is the reality. That's why the parents are still responsible up until a certain age.
Now you're talking. So now the responsibility then boils down to two parents. Right? Because we understand that when two parents are involved cognitively, the child performs, makes rational decisions and everything. So we understand. So when we're talking frontal cortex lobe, in my opinion, it only came about as an excuse for those who were singly handling the child. It to me, I didn't hear that, and I don't necessarily see even the ADHD where, yeah, sure, you see ADHD, but where there's play and two parents involved and things like that, statistics show the exact opposite.
Well, so there are ways that and family cultures that give you an advantage for sure, but the basics of human development and growth is still the same.
Okay,
that's why there are prodigies on this end and prodigies on this end. We give them all kinds of labels. They're not excuses. There are different ways that different people think. And so that's why we hear about autism. It's an autistic spectrum. It's not just you, and you hear it described as autism or ADHD. Any of those things, they're just polarities. There's the degree to what something is reached or maintained or focused on. So I understand. I understand your.
Yeah, because anybody can tell you anything.
Well, I mean, and that's true. But there are so many ways to prove that point. Look at the number of people who get hit by cars, from kids to young adults. I mean, those numbers, of course, they supersede adults, but it's not just because, adults aren't walking. It actually happens to be, along with that frontal cortex or that frontal lobe, that's reasoning. That's your spatial, your ability to have a spatial relationship between something else. So they may not see, the way that kids see, and young adults even, see a car's distance is not the actual distance. It's like that caution on your side view mirror. Things are closer than they appear. But with a child's mind and a child's eye, it's actually closer than it appears.
Right.
You think you have plenty of time to run across the street, so you run in front of a car, not recognizing the velocity of the car, the speed of the car, all of those things are part of that developmental process. You haven't had enough time yet to really develop that spatial relations, and there's a prodigy in that. There are kids whose spatial recognition is better than others. It's one of the intelligences. Being able to adjust and understand spatial relations, it's one of our intelligences. So, I mean, all of these different things, because you're good at something in one area, does not mean that you may have the same proficiency in other areas.
I get that, right? That's why I was studying that book on brain, right? And Dr. Jaak Pansep, right, was talking about the significance of what the brain can do with play. This significantly increased, this conversation significantly increased when we took play out of education.
Absolutely.
Right?
Right.
It significantly increased when we removed the father. Now we on to the daddies. Now we in my area, right? Right? So it significantly increased when the father is not available or around or interaction, right? The information that we now have, because you are always sending something in this area to study. We're always looking for certain things in this area to study. What is the importance and why family, and putting family first, and what this really significantly means? How do you save a culture? Right. One of the things that we have defined is the negativity for which our words have impacted family. And so in that conversation, how we negatively have been impacted and have been controlled by the media through the process, right along with the strongholds in the area where our brains are constantly impacted. And there's proof all around us that words manifest what you speak. Right? So that tells us that the brain remains one of the most powerful vehicles on the planet Earth. The brain that's in your head. So frontal cortex issues literally are exacerbated when the father's not around, when play is not involved, and when violence and fear and all these other things are present. We understand through ACEs that those same things can impact the skeleton of the body. So in other words, I can give you so much trauma that your body doesn't grow.
And share with ACEs.
Adverse childhood experiences. That's what ACEs is. So I can impact your life so much on in poverty, in hate, in trauma, in abuse. I can impact you so much that your skeleton doesn't grow. At the center of that is what? The brain. So my point as we continue to go forward in this conversation, the fears, right, that you have come from these areas. When you are able to let someone dictate to you, when the system is able to dictate to you, because you do not pick up books, read, study, or do follow through or search, someone is able to dictate to you exactly these things and the strongholds. So I can dictate to you fear. I can dictate to you distraction. I can dictate to you abandonment. I can dictate to you rejection. Right? Mm-hmm. Because you're not picking up a book. What did Jim Rome say? You can always tell a person by the library in their home.
Definitely acceptable culture.
So if that is the process, right, what does the library look like in the homes of fatherless children? It's Father's Day. What does the library look like in the home of a single father who's not participating in his child's life? What does the library look like in the home of a single mother who is parental alienating the father, and vice versa, the father parental alienating the mother, right?
And so just bringing up that term, parental alienation, that is another fear-based response. It's a fear-based response. So what are you afraid of that you would prevent your child from seeing their parent?
It's back to the other one, power.
So it could be control.
Oh, it's control for sure.
It could be pride, because pride would say, along with rejection and abandonment, pride could say, "We don't need you." Right?
Well,
I can do this by myself. Right? So the fear is that
But you're not. But go ahead.
Your real fear is, am I enough?
Yeah.
Am I enough? Do I have enough? Even if I don't, I'm going to do my very best.
Let's really put it into this thing right now. I'm looking in the camera.
An end to it?
Yeah, we're gonna put it into this. No one raises a child alone. No one. The fact that you would even consider saying it is a flaw and an actual problem to the environment for which you're raising the child. And it's going to impact you as well. No one raises a child alone. When you choose those words, you're negating family, the daycare, the school. You're throwing away the dad, the auntie, the uncles, the brothers, the cousins. When you get somewhere and you say, you know what, I raised my kid all by myself. That's cocky, that's arrogant, and it's ignorance. You cannot possibly understand how if you leaned on the government, you did not raise that child alone. And we need to come out of that process because we have way too many kids in CPS, in the foster care, and juveniles. We're not winning the battle against the system talking about we raised a child all by ourselves and participating in parental alienation. We're killing them, right? So let's put that to rest. right? I don't want to hear, and tomorrow when I'm interviewed in California, I'm telling them I do not want to hear ever again, my mom did not raise us on her own. The fact that we would even consider not honoring the other people who contributed, the relationships that we had with other people that helped shape our lives, that's just ignorant. And we gotta stop saying that.
So let me say again, when we look back to our childhood, these are ideas that were developed in your childhood. So being able to unpack that, to see the bigger picture, the bigger, broader picture, that's like when you were a child, that's my ball. Right? You may not have purchased that ball. The ball would, maybe you got it for your birthday. That's my ball. This is about possession. This is about possession and ownership. And that is misleading. So if you're thinking that way from the beginning, right? My baby, my child, my scooter, my bike, my car, my girlfriend, my boyfriend, that's a mindset that is groomed in childhood of ownership and possession. And so when we talk about the idea, when it becomes an adult speaking, my child, my baby, right? It's that same idea, that single-mindedness as a child that we developed that we did not unpack into adulthood. That's where you see that reflecting. And I when people say that, they don't mean that literally. People say that from the lens of that child that has a bicycle or tricycle. That's my bike. I am the parent. I did this by myself. It's that idea that hasn't yet been unpacked or expressed in a way that is inclusive of all of the other investments that people make, neighbors, friends, the mailman, giving a kind word. All of those people are part of that process. But because we're still using the same my bike, my puppy, my kite mentality from childhood, we don't typically unpack that as an adult, and it shows up in that type of language. But it's not actually what people are saying. It is I haven't unpacked that possessiveness yet. I haven't fully recognized. And when people say, well, who contributed to your life? You can't even name all the people who contributed to your life or to your child's life.
Well, I'm going to try.
You try as you might. You got 50 something years in the making.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna spit it.
And even with our children, we have that many years in the making. It's in the making of that child or that family or that relationship. It's in the making of it.
I think in the fear of all things, right? The strongholds, fears in place. Mm-hmm. I think we rewarded negative behavior to the point that the fear is the outcome. I think we rewarded negative behavior to the point that the fear is the outcome. One of the things that we got to be clear on is how we use the court to alienate, how we use the court to destroy a man's life or a woman's life, how we use the court or the system to destroy children, how we use the court. So when there's fear for letting a father lead, it's very, like you said, I agree with you on this one point for sure, because it's very hard for you to say, and having a conversation earlier with the young lady in California, you not knowing, right, how to deal with a male, right? And your young son is working on his protective action, mm-hmm. his words, and how he speaks. And he'll say, don't do this. Well, you've got so much reward for not even paying that no attention that now you can't even hear a man. The conversation I had the other day was, if she can't apologize, she not the one. That line in itself, it's not a great line, right? But it's an actual thing that because you have been conditioned, it's very hard for you to say, I'm sorry, because nothing has really ever held you accountable, not even yourself. So you saying I'm sorry is difficult. But the more you say you're sorry, the freer and the better the communication becomes with your spirit and the people that you are in your circle with. If you hang on to those things, those are the things that separate you. Why? Because you're only being validated by the system for which you are accepted in. And that is this mother is always right crap. Right. And even on Mother's Day, we just give and give and give. And every mother is, oh, well, I don't, on Father's Day, here come the judgment. And he's not really that good of all of that come into play. There's no accountability on the mothers. She could be the worst mother in America. She getting gifts and everything. And everybody going to say Happy Mother's Day. So you validate the behavior on one end, and then you don't validate the behavior on the other end. That creates the fear for everything going forward, which then if you fear me and I sense that, I got a chance to take advantage of that. You see, but that is that not reaping what you sow? So your fears is setting up the actual failure for what is good for you. We have capitalized in this country, in the system. They've capitalized on you to the point to where you are the biggest consumer. Mm-hmm. When you were married in a two parent household and you were under construction, the man didn't want you to spend so much. I got a story where I know a man who got and got all the bells and whistles, got the credit together, the whole nine, put it all together, started stacking, you started making money, and you started doing all these great things, right? He helped, I got you on your feet. That's what we do. I got you on your feet, right? I got you. Your credit went from 5 to you got an 800 credit score, right? You got limits on your credit card, but you're not really shopping. We paying cash for everything, and you're saving money. Now you got money in the account. You got credit cards with thousands on it, right? And you happen to go to the mall one day. And you go to the mall one day with your sister, and you make a call, and you say, "Hey, can I, spend some money while I'm here at the mall?" Right? And so it was like, yeah, go ahead. So when you get off the phone, the sister go, "Oh, you got to call and get permission to use your own credit card?" Right? And so she go, yeah. So they go, she spend more than what she said she was going to spend. Tear up a whole marriage. Come back in the house. 9 weeks later, I want to move out. Tear up a whole marriage. You are, and this is a statistic, you are 167% likely to end up in divorce if the person that's got your ear is divorced. Or single. You got to watch yourself, right? So that would create another fear. So now who has the fear? The man going, "Oh, no, she's not worth it." You see what we did? Are you watching this? And we need each other.
And so, what is an important piece as we're wrapping up is recognizing there is I call it the trauma drama loop. It goes from male to female, female to male, and we get caught in this infinity loop of this tension and distension between men and women, male and female. We get caught in this loop, and at some point, the strongholds, one, give us clues as to how to unravel the loop. So it may have happened in your lifetime, but it doesn't have to continue. You can continue on for him, and he can continue on for you. So there is a way to do it. It is a reflective process. It is recognizing your childhood ideas as you are an adult and taking the perspective from removing and separating that perspective from childhood and move into adult decision making. That means that you have to refine and define your roles and your understanding. You have to challenge those roles, and that's part of what the nature of Calvin and his conversation around fatherhood does. It challenges those childhood ideas and thoughts and even experiences so that you don't have to continue that loop. We want to, if we've had that experience and we're on this downswing, we want to go up and stay up. We want to do some self-reflection. We want to unpack the baggage. We want to recognize where this belief system is coming from and then shift it from what may be unhealthy to more healthy decision making. And I think that's what this conversation is about. While our strongholds hold fears in place, if we don't explore it deeper, if we don't take that time, if we don't shift our mindset, that means we continue in this trauma loop, and we stay there and we're stuck there, and we take that to our children, and then that's what we send them into their future with. Because remember, our children are that childhood mindset. So the ideas that they have doesn't mean that they fully understand it. They can only understand as far as their frontal lobe will allow them to understand. You can only go that far, and it's up to us adults to help them to have a healthy transition past that trauma and drama loop. That's where we're important as mothers and fathers and as families. That's why we are so important.
Yeah, well, it's healthy, right? It's healthy, and you are not, and this is to all my, people out there that want to play, the racism games and the privilege game and the victim game and, all of that. You cannot save America this way. You cannot. In fact, the more you do this, the more damage you cause, the more the system is able to take advantage of you. Until you understand that, and you understand that, the life of a child requires both parents. Having fears for a man that leads is very, very, it's understanding. Because as you said, you're the one raising them, so you don't even trust your own kid anyway to become a man. So you raise them knowing, and then gets on the back of the side, like I was saying, what I got? I got an automatic out. Now, when they don't turn out to be nothing, I could just say, he didn't have his daddy. We just going to pile on. And because we do that, we reap what we have sown. It doesn't get away. So being inclusive of the parent, and I can do a whole show on how to bring your family together, right? We can do a whole show on that. And here are some steps that you can take to bring your family together, even when you're in the step process, or even when you're in these other areas, how you cultivate that. But it's really a man's job and a woman's cooperation to make it happen. So the man has to have the skill level of the leadership to make it happen. So it's a man's job and a woman's cooperation to surround the children the right way and to make that happen. But that's a whole nother conversation. That's a whole nother show. Now, with that being said, Father's Day is coming up. There's an event at what's the name of that place?
The Rooster Tail.
The Rooster Tail this Sunday. Real Dad Speak, right? Real Dad Speak. They cut their ticket prices in half. It's $75. You get a buffet, all of that. Music, comedy, the whole nine. Yours truly is keynoting, and I gotta say, this is a really good person. Like, just meeting this person, their spirit comes across. Miss Sarah, your spirit comes across with a good heart because you understand and you've been impacted by, she lost her father at 2, and her brothers played a key role in her life. And she really has seen and gotten the benefits from having those brothers be father figures in her life. And she recently last year lost her husband, who was a sweetheart in her life as well. So this is something she wanted to do. I'm there, and it's going down, and we're gonna have a good time. So that's Real Dad Speak LLC. You can look it up, and the tickets have been cut to $75 per person.
Do you know if it's available on Eventbrite on Facebook?
I think it's on Eventbrite and Facebook.
Okay.
I think it's on both. But with that being said, Heather, tell them where they can greet you at, meet you at,
you can
and
reach
beat you.
Thank you. You can reach out to me at yourinspiredjourney.com. That's yourinspired with a D, journey.com. Or you can reach out to me by phone at 313-759-7855. 313-759-7855.
And, before I go into this, dialogue, right, I want it to be known that you can reach me at calvintman.com. And for your speaking engagements, athlete mentoring, if you got an athlete that needs mentoring, one-on-one mentoring, the whole nine, at calvintman.com. I'm booking speaking engagements come the fall when I release All Ingredients Count. With that being said, I don't know how many times I can tell you to put your family first. I know that's what this podcast is called. I know this is what it means. I know we have painted a bunch of pictures. My biggest fear, as you would say, using the word fear, my biggest fear is that good information continues to be not valued to the right people. If we continue the path of thinking that disrespect, intolerance, negativity, all kind of stuff, getting high in front of the kids, we think that if we continue to think those things are normal, you will continue to get the results that you see. These results that we're looking at is horrendous, and it's not that I'm nowhere near scared, but I'm concerned when the best of us and the rest of us frown upon the least of us and don't support. So with that being said, I'm asking that you dig deep into your heart. Any father that's interested in getting involved, go to goodfathersonly.com. We're always looking for fathers who want to make a difference and who wants to give back. And we have a nice little membership waiting there for you. But more importantly, do not forget this message. Always, always put your family first.